Radioactive Theater presents A Tale of Suspense. She dared to place an ad that led to murder in My Dear Niece. With guest hostess, Arlene Schoenherr.
Good evening, friends. I am your sweet, kind, and loving hostess for the opening of Radioactive Theater, a project designed to entertain while visiting the past of this world. We'd like to thank Grosse Pointe Theater for their costumes, the HELM at the BOLL Life Center for their filming space, and the generosity of Green Eraser Productions, who does commercials for small businesses free of cost. Before we begin tonight's story, let's see a couple of those commercials.
Welcome back to Live Theater, as Grosse Pointe Theater brings you their 2021-22 new season. It starts off with a beautiful evening of song and dance with Some Enchanted Evening. And the whole family will love the everlasting traditional Christmas story, It's a Wonderful Life, written by our own Marty Buffalini. And in a no-nonsense style, we gathered a hilarious group of nuns to sing their way through nonsense. And while some love Shakespeare, we give you I Hate Hamlet in a funny, humorous fashion. And, rounding out our season, we travel to the hills for The Sound of Music. Call now for tickets, 313-881-4004, or visit us online at www.gpt.org. But hurry, before we sell out.
Become a champion at the HELM at the BOLL Life Center, 158 Ridge Road in Grosse Pointe Farms. Seniors of competition compete freely each week. Awards are given each month to a champion, but the biggest prize of all is winning the coveted yearly championship. Call 313-407-6225 for more information. Don't miss out. Become a champion now.
And now, my friends, sit back and relax as I introduce tonight's story of suspense. Mrs. Rogers was the kind of a lady to whom nothing ever happens. She has been a quiet widow, living in a quiet town, among quiet friends. But dear Mrs. Rogers hardly expected to become involved in murder when she put that innocent little classified ad in the local paper. Things were not so quiet after the ad. So, close your eyes and listen, my friends, as we travel back to 1946 for My Dear Niece.
My dear niece, I'm writing you this letter to explain certain recent actions of mine about which you are probably curious. You will recall in my last phone conversation with you that I was bored and looking for a small-time employment that might remedy my tedium. Upon your advice, I placed an advertisement in our local paper, and you will probably recall its text. Widowed woman, genteel, some secretarial experience, drives own car, desires position of interest with reliable business house. Address, Mrs. Dorothy Rogers, Box 2B, or phone, Hilton 22412.
Hello?
Mrs. Rogers, please.
This is Mrs. Rogers.
I'm calling about the ad you ran in yesterday's paper.
Oh, yes.
I think I can offer you a position you'd be interested in, Mrs. Rogers. My name is Bruce.
Yes, Mr. Bruce.
We're a very small publishing house, Mrs. Rogers, and we need someone to take care of any of the contacts we might wish to make in your part of the country.
Oh, then you're not from Hilton, then?
No, our offices are in Los Angeles. We pay you $50 a week, providing you can use your home as an office. Although there wouldn't be much office work required. As I say, the position primarily would be one of establishing contacts.
That'd be fine, Mr.
Bruce.
Oh, that's fine, Mr. Bruce.
Good. Then consider yourself under salary beginning immediately, Mrs. Rogers. I'll phone you again as soon as there's something more definite for you to do.
Well, thank you.
And that's how I got the job. I assumed, naturally, that I would immediately receive instructions from Mr. Bruce as to how I should go about establishing contacts. But the first word I had after the telephone conversation was when the postman arrived the next Saturday with an envelope for me containing a check for $50. There was no return address on the envelope, and the check was a personal one, bearing no company name. It was signed R.L. Bruce. 3 weeks went by in this fashion. Each Saturday, I would receive the $50 check in the mail, and I began to wonder what I was being paid for when at last I heard from Mr. Bruce.
I have your first assignment for you, Mrs. Rogers.
I was beginning to wonder, Mr. Bruce.
Getting impatient, were you? Well, this will keep you busy for a while.
Really?
Mr. Paul Stevens will arrive in Hilton this afternoon. He's one of our most promising new authors.
Yes?
Mr. Stevens has some rewriting to do on a novel we plan to publish in a few months. Too many people interrupt him here in Los Angeles. I wonder, could you put him up at your home until he finishes?
Oh, well,
He'll be no bother, Mrs. Rogers. He has an awful lot of work to do.
Well, I suppose I could.
That's fine. It's just a place for him to get away. Oh, and one more thing.
Yes?
Just so we're sure he's not bothered, don't tell anyone he's staying with you.
I'm sure no one in that small, quiet, nosy town will ever notice that the widow has a visitor. So it shouldn't be a problem. But just in case it is, here is how problems are fixed in our town.
Got problems in your home? Leaky faucet? Broken glass? Need a lock or a key to pass? No matter the problem, we're here for you to solve your problems through and through. A problem big, a problem small. We can help you fix them all. At Gilbert's Pro Hardware, we've got the know-how to show how. Gilbert's Hardware, serving the Grosse Pointes, St. Clair Shores, and almost anywhere else.
Michigan's lake effect can bring us snow. Or Michigan's lake effect can bring us glow. Go with the glow. Lawton Ridge Winery ships anywhere in Michigan and many other states in the USA. Just visit LawtonRidgeWinery.com. That's LawtonRidgeWinery.com. Lake Effect wine. So good.
I'm not sure if Gilbert's can fix the loneliness problem, but I want to thank Lawton Ridge Winery for their loneliness solution. Good. Well, I hope you've gained some interest in tonight's story. And hopefully you haven't gotten too close to the edge of your seat yet. But if you have, gently push yourself back into a more comfortable position as we continue with tonight's story.
Mrs. Rogers?
This is Paul Stevens, Mrs. Rogers.
Oh, Mr. Stevens, I've been waiting for your call.
I wonder if you could pick me up.
Of course.
Oh, that's very kind of you.
Where are you?
I'm at the corner of, just a minute. I'm at the corner of Brookside and Sierra Madre.
Corner of Brookside and Sierra Madre. Fine. I am driving a black Buick Coupe.
Black Buick Coupe.
Yep.
I'll be waiting.
Good.
Bye.
Goodbye.
When I arrived at the corner of Brookside and Sierra Madre, the usually quiet intersection was filled with people and an ambulance was just pulling away. For all I knew, Mr. Stevens could be in it. Then I saw Officer Barnes in the police car.
Hello, Officer Barnes.
Oh, good afternoon, Mrs. Rogers.
What happened?
Oh, hit and run accident a few minutes ago.
Dear, who got hit?
Oh, man, about 35. No identification yet.
Was he badly hurt?
He's dead.
Oh, dear.
Yep.
I'm supposed to meet someone here, a gentleman here by the name of Paul Stevens.
Well, if you'd like, I can give you a call when we have an identification on him.
Oh, would you really? Oh, I would be more than grateful.
Okay.
Thank you, thank you.
I went slowly back to where I had parked. I was confused and frightened a little that the hit-and-run victim might be Paul Stevens, and if so, how would I get in touch with Mr. Bruce to tell him what had happened to his young author?
Mrs. Rogers?
Yes?
I'm sorry to have kept you waiting. I'm Paul Stevens.
Oh, Mr. Stevens. Oh, I'm so relieved. That accident just upset me. I thought for a moment it was you.
It wasn't me.
Oh, good. Please do get in.
Thank you.
I tried making conversation with Mr. Stevens on the drive home, but he seemed tired and not inclined to talk, and so we drove quietly back to my house. We went inside, and I showed Mr. Stevens to his room, and then went into the living room to tidy up. The telephone rang as I was setting out some ashtrays.
Hello?
Hello, Mrs. Rogers. This is Officer Barnes.
Oh, officer, I'm so glad you called. I wanted to
I
tell
checked
you
that identification for you.
Well, yes, and that's what I wanted to talk to you
Well,
about.
the name was Paul Stevens, all right.
Oh?
Oh, yeah, we had a flyer on him. That's how we knew. He was wanted for a payroll robbery in L.A. And he wasn't hit by a car. He was thrown from the car. He was murdered.
Hang up the phone.
Thank you.
Oh my goodness. Things don't look so good for Mrs. Rogers. I do hope those quiet neighbors have been nosy. After all, just the thought makes me famished. And I know just where to go.
Famished for a burger that's top of the line? Joined by a beer that's really fine? Little Tony's has what you need. World-class beer and world-class feed. 20513 Mack Avenue in Grosse Pointe Woods. Or call 313-885-8522 for carryout. 313-885-8522. Famished? Go world class. He said to her, I've got a small favor to ask of you. Take this gift of love that's true. When love is what you savor, get a gift from Favors. Small favors, that is, right here in Grosse Pointe. Call 313-887-1774. They ship anywhere in the USA.
I'm not sure if Small Favors has bulletproof vests, but they do have some great gifts. But I digress. Let's get back to our story before that gun goes off.
Who are you? Why did you pretend to be Mr. Stevens?
I'm stupid.
What?
I didn't think the police would find out who he was. I didn't know he was wanted by the police.
You killed him?
Yes, I killed Paul Stevens.
Why?
I run a very special publishing business, Mrs. Rogers. That much of the story's on the level. I print, pornographic books for a very special clientele. Mr. Stevens somehow got a hold of my list of clientele and threatened to use it for blackmail. So I killed him.
You horrid man!
Maybe so. Better get yourself ready, Mrs. Rogers. You got some driving to do.
He made me drive him to a restaurant on the highway out on the other side of town, a place with quite a bad reputation. All the while I was trying to remember who he was. I say remember because there was something familiar about him. But what that something was, I couldn't for the life of me think.
What are you doing here? I had to come. It didn't work. They found out who he was. So you couldn't stay where you were? She knows I'm not Stevens. A cop told her.
Well, you could hide at her house anyway. Instead, you come out here where you can get caught.
Al, look, listen.
What is the matter with you? Mary set this whole thing up so you can get rid of the guy, hide right under the cops' noses. Instead, you come out here and you louse up the deal.
It's not loused up yet.
Will be if you don't get away quick.
Maybe. I don't know if you've met Mrs. Rogers. Mrs. Rogers, this is Al Newholt. He owns the place.
Hi.
Hello.
How did they know it was him? How did the cops identify him?
I dumped him on the corner before I met her, like we planned. But he was hot. They had photos and prints on him.
Did that
I know
payroll
who you
job.
are. You're Mr. Bruce.
What did you say?
He's Mr. Bruce. He's the one that called me on the phone and offered me a job and told me to look out for Mr. Stevens.
That's right, Mrs. Rogers. How did you know?
Your voice. I knew I recognized something, and now I know it's your voice.
What are we gonna do, Al? They know the stiff is Stevens. She knows my real name. What are we gonna do now?
You are on your own, buddy. And you better get out of here before the dinner crowd comes in and maybe somebody recognizes you.
Okay, Al. But you're not gonna help me?
I can't. Don't you see that?
Yeah, sure. Okay, Al. Let's go, Mrs. Rogers.
But where?
Back to your place and start all over again. After that, I'm not so sure. I might have to kill you.
You may well imagine my fright, my dear niece, as I drove back through town with this bloodthirsty man at my side. My car is not new, as you know, and although I often have trouble with it, I never before had the horn stick.
Now you stay there, right? Don't try to drive away, see?
Yes, sir, I see.
He got out and slammed the door. He opened the hood and yanked at something. The horn finally stopped blasting, and he slammed down the hood. Then he jumped back in, again slamming the door.
Let's get out of here.
Got that horn fixed, Mrs. Rogers?
Who's that?
Oh,
Good evening, Mrs. Rogers.
Tell him everything is all right.
Want me to fix that horn for you?
it's fine. Thank you very much, Mr. Myers.
It won't take but a few seconds. Then you'll have it to use.
No, it's all right. Mr. Stevens, this is Mr. Ralph Myers.
How you do, sir?
Hi.
Saw you pulled them wires to get the horn stopped. Usually fix Mrs. Rogers' car myself. Makes you feel kind of funny when something doesn't go right with it, you know?
Of course.
I'll bring it in the morning, Mr. Myers.
No sense bothering, Mrs. Rogers. I'll go with you now if you like. Then I can take the car on home with me. It's not safe driving without a horn. Take me a few moments to fix it. I'll bring it back first thing in the morning.
I believe you wanted to show me the town this evening, Mrs. Rogers.
Oh, well.
Wouldn't you need the car, Mrs. Rogers?
Well,
I was really looking forward to the drive, Mrs. Rogers. You don't mind?
fine. You will come by in the morning and pick up the automobile, Mr. Myers?
Oh, sure. Of course.
Thanks for your trouble, Mr. Myers.
Glad to be of help. You know, this is such a little town. Everybody knows each other. Everybody likes each other. Everybody likes to help each other. Isn't that so, Mrs. Rogers?
Yes.
Well, good evening, Mrs. Rogers. Nice to have met you, Mr. Stevens.
We drove on home. I tried to figure out why he chose me, out of all the people who must have placed advertisements that day, as a person with whom he would hide out. But by now I was convinced that Mr. Bruce had deliberately set out to murder Mr. Stevens for some reason and hide out in my house where the police would be most unlikely to look for him. But why my house? Why had he chosen me? When we got to the house, Mr. Bruce made me place a long-distance call to Los Angeles for him.
It's ringing.
All right, give it to me.
Hello?
Mary.
Leon?
Yeah. Listen, meet me at Al's as fast as you can get out here. Something went
What's
wrong.
happened? Are you all right?
Yeah, fine. I'll tell you more when you get out here. But get out here as fast as you can.
All right, Leon.
So, you got any pets you need to feed before we leave?
Where are we going?
Little trip.
Oh, dear.
Don't answer.
Well, it might be the operator, and she'll worry.
Okay, but I'll be right here.
Hello?
Hello, Mrs. Rogers, this is Officer Burns. Just say, oh, yes, operator.
Yes, operator.
Is he still there?
Yes, operator.
Okay, try and stall him for a bit. We're coming to get him.
Dear Mr. Myers, he understood me and called the police. Well, Mary, I needn't tell you that this was the most terrifying moment of my life. I knew Mr. Bruce was trying to get rid of me, so I stalled like Officer Brown said. I argued with him about closing up the house and getting my purse. I did things very slowly until he pointed at the gun in his pocket and said, "No more stalling. Let's go." He turned off all the lights and we walked slowly toward the door.
Oh, I dropped my purse.
Stay down, Mrs. Rogers.
What?
Hold him high, Bruce.
Oh, there you are.
And there it is, my dear niece, the explanation I promised you. I felt, as your aunt, that I should tell you, Mary, how you happened to be in the county jail awaiting trial. When Mr. Newholt in the roadhouse first mentioned your name, I was suspicious. But not until Mr. Bruce made the phone call to you did I piece the story together. You had suggested the advertisement. Your husband answered it and employed me. Oh, if only you told me, my dear, that you'd gotten married while you were in Los Angeles. After all, I am your only living relative. And I could have come to your wedding. Then this whole thing wouldn't have happened, would it, dear? Because I would have known Mr. Bruce all the time. Let me know after the trial what your new address is to be, and I will continue writing. As always, Aunt Dorothy.
Well, thank goodness Mrs. Rogers is all right. And I hope this story of suspense didn't snap your suspenders. Wait a minute. Does anyone wear suspenders these days? Probably not. That's something that was worn in the past. Yes, in the past. When people could only hear and not see stories of suspense. But now, you can do both. On behalf of Green Eraser Productions, the HELM at the BOLL Life Center, and Grosse Pointe Theater, thank you for joining us by listening and or seeing this radioactive production. Until next time, good night, dear friends. May you always stay in suspense.